This podcast is brought to you by CRAConnect and Menken Trials.
Welcome to the CRA Corner Podcast. I am Anna Parts.
And I'm Maria Milas, and we're two former CRAs talking all things clinical operations. Hello everyone, welcome to a second episode of the CRA Corner, and today together with Annalisa, we're so excited to speak about the CTA role, the Clinical Trial Assistant, and it's a follow-up conversation from our previous episode where we were speaking about entry-level positions within the clinical research industry and how hard it is to break into the industry. And even after we recorded that episode, we just kept on speaking about why is it so hard to get that first entry-level position, right, Annalisa?
Yeah, indeed. And we spoke quite a lot about CRAs, but actually how many people take the role from CTA to CRA and how ordinary actually it is. And I think it's one of the best ways to get into the industry. And also actually from seeing it basically from ground up, and you can see the study from behind the scenes, basically. It's really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And today, the plan for this episode is to speak a little bit about the clinical trial assistant role. And one of the reasons we decided to dedicate a full episode to it is because one of the most efficient, fastest, I would say, and maybe even the role that exposes you most to become a CRA is through the CTA role, the clinical trial assistant role. Now, of course, the CTA role can have different tasks and responsibilities depending if you are sitting within a CRO or maybe you're sitting within a sponsor. We even have CTA position within academia. Did you know that?
Yeah, I didn't actually know. I saw yesterday somebody reaching out, and I think she was from NHS or something like that. And I was like, okay, there is definitely this
Absolutely.
growing farther than the CROs and pharma. So.
Exactly, which is great for especially those aspiring clinical research professionals to enter the industry, because now if you are targeting a role such as CTA, you don't have just the CROs and the sponsors, you also have academia, which is great too, because it just gives us another pool of companies or another pool of roles that we can target. So I don't know if I ever told you, Annalisa, but I became a CRA through the CTA role myself. I was a CTA for a year.
Yeah, I think I saw it from your LinkedIn page at some time when I started to speak with you, or maybe you mentioned that in the conference that we first met. But indeed, it's really awesome.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's the best way that I always encourage everyone who's saying, I want to become a CRA, but I don't come from a direct path of being a clinical research professional. I always encourage everyone to go down that path because it was the best decision for me. And I do think that that 1 year, first year I became a CTA, was the best preparation also for the CRA role.
And I think even for the CTA role, if you don't become one, I think getting to know them is extremely valuable as well, and how to actually work together, how to basically them supporting you, which is my experience. Of course, I haven't been a CTA, but still, they are your backbone basically as a CRA to help you to do whatever you need, So it's definitely a really awesome role to be in as well.
Totally. And in when I started in the clinical research industry, as you said, I just post everywhere I can about the CTA role because I love to encourage everyone. If you're thinking about becoming a CRA, do start with the role as a CTA or something similar, because as you know, these roles can have different names within different companies, but then the task and responsibilities can be the same or similar, or you do some or others. So if you see some role like a CTA clinical trial assistant or project coordinator, or have you seen any of these roles with other names?
I think even sometimes I feel like even the CTA and CRA positions are a little bit mixed. So you might be doing things that maybe CTA is doing in another company. So it's really basically company by company what the role is being called. I think even for now, if I'm not mistaken, there's definitely CTAs, but a lot of activities actually have gone also to TMF managers, basically. So you no longer connect with CTAs to upload your documents, but still they like go straight to the DMF manager. So definitely the role itself is changing, I believe. So
Absolutely.
definitely, and
Absolutely.
some countries I know that or companies, they do also submissions, which is quite
Yeah.
often like not
Yeah.
a job for them, but still they do it.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I did that myself when I
Oh,
was
you
a
did?
CTA.
Ah.
I did, and I remember that when I started as it was the first role that I had in any
Mhm.
CRO, and I started as a CTA at Icon, and it was in Barcelona here in Spain. And I remember that I was so excited because I wanted to start in the clinical research industry and contributing to clinical trials. So anything that I could do for me was already huge, even if they told me, look at this piece of paper and check if the page number is correct. It was already such a huge thing, right? Because I was
Yeah, but
contributing.
still, like if you think about your CTA role, which is basically farther away than just being a CTA, you
Yeah.
already had like got the experience for RSU basically for submissions and
Yeah.
that kind of things as well. So it's not
Yes.
only you being as a
Yes.
CTA, but also doing the job of regulatory CRA
Yeah.
and this kind of things as well.
Yeah. And it's a great point what you just made, because so here let me take a step back. Maybe this is useful just out of curiosity. How when I started as a CTA, right? You come from not knowing anything about clinical trials.
Mhm.
Nothing. You are probably most likely, if you don't come from, I don't know, perhaps a course or a master's degree in clinical trials, you've never seen an ethics committee submission before, or a package that you need to submit to the regulatory authorities. You've never seen this before, or an
Mm.
informed consent form, unless you have somebody in your family or friends who are participating in a clinical trial. So I remember that first day in the office, I was so excited, and I was going to show me about. I heard about the protocol of a clinical trial, so I was so excited to open those documents and try to learn. And I remember that my manager was, as you know, we work in international teams. So my manager as a CTA was in Sweden. So I remember that I 9:30 a.m., because this is Spain, so we don't start earlier than that. So 9:30 a.m. we had scheduled a call, and I remember just sitting at, we had sort of cubicles, or a sort of a
Mm.
desk with separation, so that we had some privacy, or some soundproof for the rest of the office. It was a huge open office. And my manager asked me, so what do you know about clinical trial documentation? Because you will be doing a lot of that. And I thought, okay, so that's what we're starting about. But it's true. The core of the CTA role, it is documentation.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if you become a CRA, like you are in somewhat still connected with the essential documents and documentation
Yeah,
that goes around, but the core focus is so much taken away from these documents because you
yeah,
go to the site, you focus on the patients, you focus on IP, like whatever, but documents usually are the things that you maybe manage to do 15 minutes
yeah,
like at the end of the visit, or you actually
yeah,
don't do it. So I think
yeah,
getting the understanding behind these documents and why do we need them, what's the reasoning behind that, and that's really as you said that you were responsible for submissions. I think that's like the
yeah,
scariest thing for me because it felt
yeah,
like you always submit something and they come back with comments and this is not suitable, this is,
always.
you need to update this, da, 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 da. And there is so
Yeah,
much activity going behind that, and to actually understand as well how all of the structure regarding regulatory and ethics actually works, and
yeah,
what is accepted, what is not. So it's really like an awesome thing, and I think
totally.
it's gives definitely. I would believe you having maybe stronger even background because of that on essential documents. Even though okay, I'm now working in DMF, but still like, but still like it's just the core training that you receive
Yes.
from there compared to me, as I didn't have the CTA background, definitely is a strong suit for you. So,
It's so important. I didn't know until much later in my experience as a CRA, or even later after my CRA role. I didn't realize how fundamental that knowledge on essential documentation is. And that knowledge began when I was a CTA. So let me
mhm,
try to paint you a picture of what I remember of what I was doing as a CTA. You know, CTAs are mainly responsible, I would say, for the TMF and for documentation in a clinical trial. And of course, maybe you're a CRA who's working in a maybe smaller company, or maybe you don't have that role in the company, so you won't have a CTA perhaps who can support you with the documentation or with reviewing the documents you're getting from the site before you upload them to the ETMF, or maybe checking if there's any missing documents or missing certificates or missing updated trainings at the site, who the CTA can just let you know before that monitoring visit. Hey, Maria, don't forget when you go
Yeah.
on site next week, get these documents. The CTA would do that for you. But sometimes you don't have the CTA role, and therefore, as a CRA, you have to do that yourself, the whole cycle, right?
Yeah.
But I remember that the main exposure I had was through the documentation, so through the TMF, making sure those essential documents were filed in the TMF. Now, whenever I would see a document, you sort of learn how to do a quick quality check.
Mm.
You check a little bit the footnotes, you check a little bit the signatures, you check do we have the initials? Do we have the full name? Is that person who is signing the delegated? Is that person, do we have the full training certificates for that person? So you sort of get into a mindset of doing quality checks and quality reviews.
Yeah, and that's something that I think as a CRA we quite like. Of course, we do quality check on patients, but regarding documentation, it's something
Mm.
that we not I would not say forget per se, but we do not think about so much of that. And because I'm now more and more into the TMF and essential documents, of course I'm like interested in the topic itself. But if we indeed look into the EMA, for example, or MHRA inspection reports, like we can see that the biggest source still for inspection findings is actually documentation. So
Yeah,
essential documents
yeah,
are the basically the source
sure.
for inspection, and half of them are major. Like half,
Yeah,
50% of them are major. And indeed, like if you have a CTA, then you are a lucky guy,
yeah,
and for them to do the review instead of you definitely will help that. But also like
totally.
from my side, because I do not indeed have a CTA background, but we had two CTAs in our country, and I was mainly assigned to one. So we worked together with her basically on all of the studies that I had, and we had really an amazing collaboration because we really knew like what to expect from each other. So
The other. Yeah,
she knew that I will let her know when I'm gonna go to the monitoring visits. She will pull, of course, the list of missing documents. Then I
the
will
report.
provide it
Yeah,
back to her.
yeah,
And indeed, if there is like any problems within the study, for example, a document missing, which usually the CTAs get the fall for it, they get yelled at, and they get like basically harassed for these documents, even though it's a CRA's responsibility to collect them. We always had like, okay, send this to me. I'm gonna be like resolving this because it's not your issue. So we worked really well, and I really
yeah,
like we had this connection really like that worked
yeah.
really well. And indeed for the CRAs, I really encourage to collaborate more with your CTAs because you can get so much more information and actually support as well for the
Mm.
part that we quite often forget to do or we don't
Yeah,
have the time to do. So definitely they
yeah,
are there to help you,
yeah,
and it's within their metrics as well. I believe that they need to have their TMFs and everything else in order as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
totally. Totally.
they are there to help you.
Definitely. And the CTA in the end is part of the team. It's part of the
Mm.
study team, especially you mentioned, right? You were assigned to a CTA, and usually it works this way. But if we take a little bit of a step back for anyone who's perhaps interested into the CTA role, because my purpose in sharing a little bit my experience and how I started as a CTA is that if you're wondering how do I start, we're on the topic of how to start, how to begin in the clinical research industry, and you're wondering if CTA is the role that you might want to do that, I do want to remind perhaps everyone that this is a we always work in a study team environment within clinical trials, and what a CTA does is to support the study team, so to support perhaps the CRA. In this case, perhaps the CTA is assigned to a CRA who is monitoring, for example, in Estonia, or monitoring in the US, or monitoring in Spain, and then you would support with all of the activities of the study that CRA. Now sometimes you can also be assigned to support a CTM, a study manager,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
you will be supporting the study according to the activities that the CTM might need. And here's where I was also doing, for example, communication support. I was perhaps sending those newsletter to the sites, or I was sending those updates of the study to the sites. So I was also in direct communication with the sites, or maybe we had big study meetings and I was taking the minutes, and then I was doing the reports out of those meetings, and then I was sending those recap or those action items that we would need to take from that meeting. So depending on what you're assigned to, whether it's more operational or more on the study manager role, and in my case it was kind of both, because even though I was a CTA at Icon, we were in a smaller department. It was one of the smaller companies that Icon acquired back in the day when I was a CTA. And of course, we worked slightly as a business unit. So as a CTA, I was doing from, as I mentioned in the beginning, submissions to the ethics committees and to the regulatory authorities in Spain. Now, that back in the day, we didn't have the platforms that we have now for unified submissions, at least in Europe. So we had to go to every single ethics committees and every single regulatory, the central regulatory, and then the local one. So it was a whole big deal of documentations you had to prepare in accordance to every single ethics committee and every single local authority, what they required for. So I felt I was doing a lot of detective work, figuring out what they need and
Yeah.
then try to match their needs, because in the team we didn't have anyone from regulatory affairs. But here's one thing that binds back to what you just said earlier that I found very interesting. Because we recognized how big the need of submissions, of ethics submissions, and the regulatory authority submissions, we then put together a small team of regulatory affairs and
Mhm.
of study startup. And these people from the CTA team were so knowledgeable that some of them directly transitioned into these roles, into
Yeah.
regulatory roles. Because
Yeah.
you were exposed to this, you have a great background having done this, and according to, of course, which company you're assigned to, you might be a CTA who only is in charge of documentation.
Mhm.
But you might also be a CTA who's in charge of giving support to the CRA, to the study manager. You become the study manager's right hand, the CRA's right hand. Or you're even a CRA or CTA who sees it all, who gets this
Mhm.
full picture oversight because you've been involved in everything. And to me, that's the beauty and importance of the CTA role.
Yeah, I think it really well brings back to us the previous podcast that we did on
Mm.
actually anytime you can learn something new, it actually helps you to go further
Yeah.
or beyond in the company or maybe even like, outside of companies. So definitely trying out, or even if you are not assigned per se to do something, and asking if you could do or learn around that definitely would help you to, as in your case, basically building
Yeah.
up in and ending up in another department. So definitely,
Yeah.
definitely worth of learning.
Absolutely. So maybe I would love to know, I know you haven't been a CTA. You didn't start in this journey in clinical trials as a CTA, but I would love to understand what was your exposure in your career as a CRA and then as a study manager. What was your exposure to the CTA role, and how do you see this role from your perspective?
Yeah, like I said, from the CRA side, when our team was really small, so I think until today have like 40 people in Estonian like section. We don't have many of us, so we had always two CTAs, and they during my time both of them like remained the same, and I was assigned to the one, and indeed, like for me the CTA role at that like next to CRA is really crucial. And I indeed I don't want to say used her services, but definitely like because it's not really using, but the support that I got from her on everything that I did, because at that time I was as well responsible for 12 studies, which is quite a high number of studies
Oh,
per
yeah.
CRA. I needed that kind of support. So she basically kept me sane regarding the essential documents and everything that I
Yeah.
needed to collect, and ensure that my TMF as well is basically up to the required
Today.
readiness.
Yeah. Mm.
So she definitely supported, and for us it was really a good collaboration, as I already said. So, but in my clinical lead time or CTM, it depends again on the
Mm.
company. I had a lot of support as well. It came in a form of CAS. I don't even central as associate or something. I don't actually know what's the
In a
definition for.
different name,
Yeah, it's
the title of the role.
yeah.
Hmm.
So basically, it's like central monitoring leads, then central monitors, and then it comes CAS. CAS. I don't know how to say it.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, the abbreviation long, but. We had I had a lot of support because one of the studies that I was responsible for was also the biggest study at the time in IQVIA. So I had also other clinical leads there, but I was still responsible around 15 countries, which again involved around 3 to 6 sites per country. And their help was extremely crucial for me because they followed up on all of the CRAs that I basically was responsible for to ensure that all of the queries, all of the I don't know open action items were actually resolved by time, and definitely them doing this job released me from quite a heavy
Yeah.
duty thing as well.
Yeah.
And we actually developed as well a system because there was a lot of follow up happening and a lot of activities being done. We ended up to create like a center of course Excel again, but we didn't have anything else to
Mhm.
use. But we actually gathered all of the activities that were pending per CRA, and that was like a really good overview to see and send out instead of like daily 3 to 5 emails to a CRA rather than send one email per week, and they can see what they still need to do. So they did it really well, and they kept it up to date and worked through it. So basically we just jumped on a call and I'm gonna ask like what is pending for this
Yeah.
week, and they will just show me the list of
Yeah.
what's pending for each of the sites, and that's I think worked really
Yeah.
well as well.
Yeah.
But they did do a lot of follow-ups and basically of the
Yeah.
legwork that needed to be done, just that the sponsors and everybody else would be
Yeah.
like satisfied in how we conduct the study.
Totally. And many might think that the CTA role is a very administrative role. And won't hide that it is. Mainly a lit, I would say it is in terms of you're doing a lot of follow up, you're doing a lot of oversight, you're doing a lot of tracking, maybe sometimes even generated trackers. You're doing a lot of documentation of meetings, minutes, action items. You do give support. So perhaps is an administrative little bit work when it comes to though clinical operations. So it's not like you're
Yeah,
just
very
scanning
much.
a document and putting it
Yeah.
somewhere. No, it has a core, a purpose. So it's a role that is absolutely essential to clinical operations. And therefore, from the CTAs I know, and of course, depending in the country that you're located, like you just said, Annalisa, perhaps in Estonia, you only had two CTAs in total, and you were at a huge CRO, working for a
Yeah.
huge CRO. So, depending in the country you are, you will have more of the CTAs or less. I was based in Spain, we had many CTAs.
Mhm.
We were at least 45 in our team
Oh, okay.
in the
Wow.
whole office, but of course we were 300 or 400
Mhm.
CRA, so it was a huge team,
Mhm.
and there still is a huge team of CTAs in clinical operations. So it is a core role, and I would say from these CTAs, of course, many see it as an entry level position, a position that gives you exposure to what clinical operations is, what the CRA role is, what the study startup role is. Maybe you're interested into creating, into having that career in clinical operations, and therefore the CTA role is the first step, and then you just grow into the CRA role or a study startup. If that's the case, I would recommend same as I did, at least stay on the job for, if you can, a year, because that 1 year gives you the exposure to as many tasks and responsibilities of the CRA role, of the study lead role, of the study startup, if that's what you want to do. It gives you the exposure to that so you understand. But it's also true that I met many CTAs who they love the job and they love that, I would say, exposure to all tasks, but at the same time, the flexibility of I can work from home, I can work from the office, I don't need to go on site, I don't need to be responsible for the site stuff. So there is also a beauty in the role that you can keep, and you don't have to necessarily move on to CRA position if you don't want to.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe to add as well, like definitely, there's a lot of paperwork going on the
Yeah,
CTA role, but still, at times you are actually as well required to speak with the sites, for example, or with clinical
yeah,
operation teams. So definitely, it's not you being left on a corner and try to work through your papers, but actually
yeah,
you still are required to communicate with both sides, basically, the study
yeah,
team and then the sites from time to time. So.
yeah. And do you know who I communicated most with when I was a CTA? I don't know if you might guess this, with the sponsors.
Oh, really? Whoa.
Yes, because
Oh.
because I was giving so much support to the study managers and to the CRAs. I
Ah.
was in all of the monthly meetings with the sponsor. I was giving the
Ah.
minutes. I was sending the minutes. I was sending the reports. I was
Mhm.
sharing the trackers with them because I was giving support to the study manager. So I even remember, I will never forget, one of the sponsors that I was assigned to was a very small biotech in the US, and it was very small. They only had one clinical study,
Mm.
and I was assigned to that one. And I remember that it was a curiosity for me because I didn't
Yeah.
know what happens if for example, a sponsor runs out of budget. And you might think, oh, this doesn't happen. This cannot happen. Well, it does. And I remember that while I was a CTA, I was astonished by, oh, wow, this specific sponsor realized that they don't have enough budget to continue with the clinical studies. So they have to pause, to stop, to analyze the data we got up until now, and then see if the study continues in the future. If not, have you ever had this experience? Because this to me was a wow, there is something of curiosity, of course, but I really was impressed. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, to be honest, I know maybe now actually if I think like because I now
Mhm.
work in the industry from the other side, but if we think back, most probably I was like a little bit wearing like pink glasses as well because I was working only with top 10 and like top 20 pharma, so
Sponsors,
they
yes.
usually like have the money, but what I saw basically happening, I think in every study, is that we run out of budget quite
Yeah,
in a middle-ish time. So
agree.
so that's definitely like a thing that of course like we went and requested for more money, but basically it's
Yeah.
still like quite like not astonishing, but to see that
It's
you are
surprising.
able
You don't
to
think.
to
Yeah,
basically not pull through the study with the budget that you are given, but actually need
yeah,
more.
totally. And it happens a lot of time because you mentioned it, how we run out of budget. It can happen. It's not common, right? But you can run out of budget, or the budget you had forecasted maybe mid-study or earlier than you thought. And it's because there's so many change management orders. There's so
Yeah.
many changes in the in what you expected in the budget. There's more monitoring visits you have to do. There's more sites that you have to add. There's more
Hmm.
resources recruitment that you have to add. There's more resources to the sites that you have to cover for. There's
Yeah.
so many things that you didn't expect at the beginning and always happen. So we always change that order at the beginning,
Yeah.
or that
It
expected
happens.
budget. And that brings me to also one of the exposures I had as a CTA, that later in the future as a CRA perhaps I didn't have that much, or maybe I didn't pay that much attention as a CTA, was as a CTA, was also checking the budgets of the site,
Oh.
right? So those budgets, those contracts, because I
Yeah,
wasn't,
running
we
ads.
had a contract team, a finance team who
Hmm.
was approving the contracts, but I was sort of this liaison in the middle, who they would send it to me, I would send it to sites, I would send it to me as CTA, I would send it to a
Hmm.
sponsor. So I was sort of in between. So I would just see them pass through my email, and then of course I would check them because it was also sometimes in the local language, and the sponsor was in the US. So sometimes the finance team at the site, their English was not the best,
Mm.
so they would prefer to have this communication in local Spanish, and then I would serve as this little bit of a translator. That happens as well. So
Yeah.
I was so surprised to see, oh wow, this is what it costs to have a monitoring visit. This is what it costs to have a patient come into the site. This is what the site charges us for the study startup. This is what they charge for recruiting one more patient. I was like, wow, those are the numbers. I've never seen them before.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think we might have the same thing, that the CTA is actually finally like the submissions or like regarding that,
Mhm.
but we were responsible for collecting the invoices. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see and how like from
It
some
really
sites
is.
they they just you constant remind them to send out an invoice for a huge amount of money, and they're just,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna do it tomorrow, and they of course
Mm.
forget about that. But
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
like
So, anyways, Annalisa, I think both of us agree that the CTA role is a so crucial,
mm,
essential role, right, in clinical operations. We do think that whether you are seeing this role as the entry gate into a clinical operations career, if you're interested then to become a CRA or then to become a study startup manager or regulatory affairs or sometimes even drug safety or anything of within the clinical research field, CTA role is a great, great role because I'm 100% sure that all my foundation of my training and my expertise, even now that I still train through CRA Connect trainings and I train CRAs, all that foundation comes from the CTA role, from having learned the basics, the essentials of clinical operations through that role. But maybe if you're seeing this role as what you actually want to do, you want to be supporting, you want to be contributing to the clinical research industry, to innovation, to bringing drugs to the market, but without the hassle of having to go on site for monitoring visits, lots of traveling, perhaps the responsibility of managing a site in clinical operations. Either way, whichever your goal is, it's a great, amazing role that I recommend to everyone if you want to join. Now, if you want to know more about the CTA role, we are planning a conversation podcast, a conversation episode with the CTA, sort of a Q&A, a fire chat that we want to have with an actual CTA who gives us more insights into what CTAs are doing in today's CTA role so that we can have more of a real conversation with CTAs. So stay put for the next episodes.
I'm really
Meet.
excited about this fire chat. Definitely have a lot of questions because I haven't been myself, but I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So stay put, check the following episodes from the CRA Corner, and I hope this is useful for you. So if you liked it, if you liked the content, if you found it insightful, you know what to do. Give us a comment, give us a like, follow us, whether you're listening or you're watching this. So I hope this is insightful, and I
Yeah,
hope to
thank you
see
as
you at
well.
our next episode. Thanks, Annalisa. This was fun.